Taylor Riffel is back for another episode of Key Talks. After an awesome first episode about growing up with OCD, Taylor returns for more tips, more strategies, and more takeaways for living and thriving with OCD. Stay tuned. It's time for Key Talks.
Welcome to Key Talks. You have me here, your host, Paula, and I'm joined by co-host,
Mike.
tech expert, Mike. And again, we have Trauma the Tiger in for Deanna.
Well, actually, and this time, Trauma the Tiger is subbing in for Snorlax, who last time was in there.
Snorlax didn't have a lot to say.
Yeah.
I'm
so-
hoping, Trauma the Tiger was supposed to do the intro, but
I don't know what's going on.
that's
So
okay. That's okay. Take your time.
We'll get Deanna to do it in
let
post.
you sort of,
Yeah.
get grounded, feel safe, and join in if and when you'd like to. So we are excited today because we are bringing back one of our colleagues, Taylor Riffel, and she joined us on a previous episode, probably about a year ago or so, something like that, talking about her life with OCD, obsessive compulsive disorder, and that talk really drew a lot of viewers, a lot of listeners, and it was a really great conversation. Actually, one of my favorite as well. Really just getting to know Taylor on a deeper level, but also just having a better understanding of what is OCD, and in the life of someone who's living it. And so because of the attention, the interest, the questions, the curiosity, we wanted to bring Taylor back today. And we're going to look more about OCD and specifically about treatment and strategies. So today's episode, OCD, treatment and strategies. So Taylor's an occupational therapist and coach on the Key Creative team. And she's been with us for a few years now. And so let's welcome her in to join us.
Tiger is not doing a good job.
No, I know.
We're going to traumatize Trauma the Tiger by
Maybe.
critiquing them too much about there.
True. We should be gentler.
Yeah, yes. Create a more safe environment for our friend over there.
Thanks
It is a little nerve-wracking
It
coming
is.
on, right?
It is.
It's not like we see any of the listeners or viewers, but there's this part of us that knows that at some point someone's going to be listening and looking. So it kind of
Exactly.
still puts the angst inside of us a little bit, right?
Exactly. Yeah.
But also, I have to say, like our conversation with you last time was just such a great conversation. Like it was so obviously because it's part of you and your lived experience. Like it was so authentic, and I think that's why it resonated with so many people as well. And I know for me, just having you speak so vulnerably, and also with so much strength and power in who you are and how OCD is a part of that. I think, it really resonated with myself and I know the viewers as well, which is why we wanted to have you back. And I know you had also heard from friends, colleagues, other professionals that clients that wanted to know more, right? And so that's where we thought, let's bring you in and let's do a deeper dive into, like I said, the OCD and treatment and strategies.
Yeah,
So
I love it.
yeah,
I love it.
how are you?
I'm
How
good.
are you doing?
I'm good. Well,
Good.
I'm currently about 7 months pregnant. So
Yes.
the viewers and listeners will have to be patient with my baby brain because
Yes.
it's for real when it comes to remembering things and explaining things. So people will have to maybe be patient with me. But yeah, I have been getting a lot of feedback from that. Which is it's so great to hear that people kind of can resonate with my story. Even if personally not experiencing OCD, knowing someone or just having a mental health challenge in general, right? Like it's really touching to hear that. But yeah, I did hear quite a bit of people say like, hey, like, are there strategies we can do where some families feeling just stuck with their kid's diagnosis of OCD or their personal diagnosis. So yeah, when we talked about doing a part 2, I was like, let's do it.
Let's do
For
it.
especially before I go on leave
Yeah,
and
yeah. Get we
yeah.
while we have you, right?
Yeah.
Do you think it would be okay if we started with a little bit of background for those who may not have listened to the first episode, but just give us like a little brief about your like diagnosis, when it happened, and a little bit about the background? Yeah.
Yeah,
Okay.
absolutely. And also like to just kind of preface
Yeah.
everything is because we'll be talking about strategies and treatment, I just want to also state that anything we share like on this podcast should just be used for general educational
Yeah.
purposes. If families and clients and stuff have actual questions, they need to talk to their healthcare provider because everybody with OCD is different. There's no one size fits all. And so treatment and strategies need to be tailored to the individual and need to be discussed with the healthcare team. So I just wanted to preface that
Yeah.
because that's
Thank you, Taylor.
important.
Yeah, that's very important.
But yeah, my journey, my actual diagnosis was in my early 20s, but my journey started from my earliest memories are of OCD memories, from lining things up, from having rituals at bedtime routines that would take hours and hours on end. So I can only remember a time of having OCD. I don't remember a time not having OCD. But my actual official diagnosis was in my early 20s when
Yeah.
I was taking my undergrad in a psychology, specializing in psychology, and I was reading through a textbook and came across the definition of OCD, and everything just kind of, it felt like the world just finally, the puzzle pieces all aligned, and ran upstairs to my mom and I said, this is me. And my mom was like, yes, it's definitely you. So
Do you remember what that definition was? I
I don't remember. No. It was just
But it was, you knew when you read it that
I
that was
knew
what
when I read
resonated.
it.
Yeah.
Like I always knew I was anxious.
Yeah.
But anxiety just like didn't describe what I was feeling because I was like, oh, everyone's talking about being anxious or having anxiety. Like I just like there's something else, and it just like nothing ever like fit or clicked. And I hadn't gone to therapy or anything like that. So I'm sure if I had gone to a therapist at that time, they would have been like, well, that's
They would have
pretty
maybe-
obvious. But
okay.
like just because I hadn't at that time, and I say my early 20s, but I guess I would have been about 18 when I got diagnosed. And so, yeah, like I feel like we always kind of knew something was off. And even my parents were like, she's just a little bit more anxious about things, but like we couldn't figure out what really that was until, I've kind of spent the years putting that puzzle together and figuring that out.
What piece of the OC, so you talked about like you knew there was the anxiety, but there was something else. What is that something else? Is that something you can put into words?
Yeah, I think I can because and that actually leads a good way to like describe OCD too, because
perfect.
it often people will have trouble differentiating between anxiety and OCD because they are both still have obsessions and anxious thoughts, right? Obsessions are things like mental thoughts, images, feelings that come up in the body that cause a lot of anxiety, right? So that can be mistaken for anxiety. Like everybody has intrusive thoughts and things like that. Where OCD is different is that compulsion piece, right? So the person's doing things to try to relieve the anxiety.
Yes.
So in my case, an example would be the bedtime routine, which in my head, for an example, I had to say to my parents before bed, no matter what I had to say, I think it was have a safe trip to work and back. And that was my script. I had to say it. And if I didn't say it right, if it didn't feel right, it didn't feel right in my body, at the time, I would say it again and again. Sometimes I would whisper it because my parents were like, why are you saying this like 100 times? Like, so I would whisper it like it had to feel right in my body. And that was the compulsion that I would engage in. So things like that, like I said, the anxiety part, I was like, I connect with that when people say anxiety, but I'm doing these things to try to relieve the anxiety that nobody can describe or nobody is like giving me a definition. And I thought, does everyone do these things in their head? Like, is this a normal thing? So that was when I read that definition. I was like, that makes sense.
So that is so clear to me. Like, and I probably had the same moment in the last episode, but every time I hear you talk, I feel like I'm learning again for the first time. But it's the things you do to relieve.
Exactly.
The anxiety.
Exactly.
That is such a, yeah. And that's how you differentiate
Yes.
from just anxiety. It's the things that you're doing repetitively
Yeah.
to relieve the anxiety.
And for me, I'm like, I'm just hearing that and I'm like, it very much aligns with myself because we've shared about my not necessarily having the same severity, but but it paired with my ADHD. But my bedtime routine was love you, good night. I'll see you in the morning. And it would be a minimum of 3 times, and it would be more if it wasn't heard. So it was that. And then everything from like, I would always have things like a pack of like cards that I would sort before bed and stuff like that. So it's just so everything felt like it was in order and stuff like that. So it was like those things where, and you know, for in my own journey, I only see it pop up more now as I'm dysregulated because that's where the old coping strategies that you align in those behaviors, they come up because things aren't 100% feeling right in terms of like yourself and then I'll be like, oh no, I got to do this. Or it's like, I'm having bad day. Mom's in the hospital again. All right. Got to check the door 3 times, stuff like that.
Yeah.
And that's, so it's very much kind of like, yeah.
That's a good point, Mike, because a lot of parents will say that to me that have kids with OCD is like, all of a sudden, like their OCD is just going haywire. Like, where is this coming from? And often if I'm like, let's step back, like what in the environment is going on? Oh, dad's been working out of town more, or school just started. Some sort of change in the environment or a new stressor can just heighten anxiety so much and OCD so much. Being pregnant, right? Like that's been a whole different journey for me. I was quite stabilized and stuff before getting pregnant. And not to say I'm not now, I have like a great amount of coping tools, but like it did present a new stressor for me and having to kind of figure out, okay, now OCD is latching onto some other things and trying to creep its way back in. Like let's go back to some of those old tools that I have. But that's exactly right. Is like stressors and changes in environments can just cause
such a different experience with it because you can be at that point of regulated where you don't even necessarily think about it other than the things that you have already kind of inherently created coping strategies in your day to mitigate that. But then once you're in that, what's gone wrong, what's the plan, and like what's the way that we get around this, which is what we're talking about today.
Because parents will often say that, right? Is like, will OCD go away? And I'm like, it's kind of like having diabetes, right? Like it's at this point in time, like with our level of science and stuff, it isn't curable. OCD isn't curable, right? That being said, OCD is an incredible condition in terms of the treatment options, and with the right treatment, it can be extremely manageable to the point where symptoms aren't even impacting day-to-day life, right? But then something happens and a change happens and OCD can kind of creep in and wander in again. And so how I kind of like to explain it too is like OCD, people with OCD have, or if we think of everyone's brain having this alarm system in it, right? Like that, for going scientific, that amygdala response, right? So it's detecting danger in the environment. Somebody with OCD, they have a faulty alarm system.
Yes.
It's constantly being triggered over and over and over again for things that aren't dangerous, right? For your brain, it might trigger for a fire. For my brain, it's like burnt toast and it's being triggered, right?
Yeah.
And then I'm engaging in a bunch of things to try to calm down the alarms, to turn off the alarms, things like that, right? So it's not curable in the sense that I have a faulty alarm system, right? I can manage the alarm system, learn how to respond better to the alarm system, how to shut off the alarm system. But at the end of the day, I have a faulty alarm system. And at this point in time and where science is at, it's just not something that we can get rid of. And so I think that's important to note. And I know that sometimes that's frustrating for parents to hear, especially when we're talking about kids, right? Because you don't want your kid to have a diagnosis of any sort, right? Like, but it's one of those diagnoses that really with the right treatments can be extremely manageable and to the point, like I said, where it's not impacting day-to-day functioning.
Thank you for sharing that. I do think that's so important for people to hear and understand as well. You mentioned something too that I just wanted to touch on as well that maybe now's the time it will come up, but you might also touch on it is like needing to take a step back and like evaluating what's going on in the environment and in our lives that might be triggering, the compulsions to occur. And so I just, maybe you can speak to that as like a strategy or something that people need to be aware of, which we did a little bit, but yeah, being like, what is going on? What elements are happening that might be impacting us on a greater level? I think that awareness of our environment and triggers is such
Yeah.
a key element in mental health in general.
Yes.
And it sounds like for OCD as well.
Yeah, and
Yeah.
OCD, if we kind of think of OCD as this need for certainty and need
Mm.
for control of our environment,
Mm-hmm.
for that alarm system to not be triggered, right?
Mm-hmm.
When there is a change happening or something that's uncontrolled in a child's environment, especially a child, right? Because
Mm-hmm.
as children, we have a lot less control over our day-to-day life
Mm-hmm.
than as adults, right?
Yeah.
And so if things are being kind of put on kids, like, or all these changes are happening, their brains are trying to seek any sorts of control.
Yes.
And that
Yes.
control is going to be through compulsions,
Yeah.
right? Of how can I control my environment? I can't
Yeah.
control that mom and dad are making me go to daycare.
Yeah.
So, but I can control that I line up the shoes and line up
Yeah.
the shoes and then line up the shoes. I can control that over and over and
And,
over
th-
again.
and then you're getting reward for it in a way
Exactly.
too. That's because I remember you sharing the story of going to the daycare and you'd be the first one there and you'd clean everything up and the daycare workers were like, this is great. Like,
Exactly.
well hired, Taylor.
Exactly.
She's only 4. That would be against labor laws. So that's an interesting aspect as
Yeah.
well when you're actually doing things that might be helpful. It's like this
Exactly.
reinforcement of something that you may not actually want or need to be reinforced. Yeah.
And even like in my daily life as an adult,
Yeah.
I always said, like even 5 years ago, if you asked me if I had cleanliness OCD and stuff, I'd say, oh no, that's definitely not an OCD. And now in the last couple of years, I've been kind of like, oh, you know what? I think my house is immaculate. Like it's very, very clean. But I was like, oh, I get enjoyment from that. I enjoy that. So that means it's not OCD.
Yes.
Um,
That's such an important piece that you
Yes.
spoke about last. So speak to that.
Yes, but now I'm starting to learn that short term it can feel like feel good. Like,
Yeah.
because you're getting that sense of control, that sense of dopamine hit when you're doing the compulsion, right? But long term, if I look at it in the amount of stress it causes me or the stress that happens when my house is dirty,
Yes.
it's
That's when you
definitely
have
an
to
OCD.
evaluate. Yeah.
Exactly. Right. And so I was mistaking the actual compulsion of doing it, of cleaning my house, excessively cleaning, and how it feels good to have a house that's clean with, oh, that's not OCD because I feel good with that. And often OCD, the compulsions are in a state of stress, right?
Yes. It's causing more stress.
Exactly.
Yes.
It's a cycle. So yeah, it's just kind of interesting in that sense.
To sort of evaluate, like, is this actually making me feel good? And maybe in the moment, but in the in the long term, like, is this an actual stressor?
Exactly.
Right? Like,
exactly.
and if it wasn't like this, would I be okay?
Exactly. That's
Yeah.
exactly it. Because that's what a lot of parents will kind of get into these cycles with their kids is like, oh, I will just give in to my kids' compulsion and just kind of do the ritual because I don't want them to be stressed out. And I feel like it's just easier to do that. But what happens when we do that with OCD is it snowballs and it gets bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger. And I often hear that about nighttime routine, especially with our clients. And my theory, and I don't actually know if there's any research or anything about this, but my theory is why this often happens at nighttime, these rituals for kids with OCD especially, is because we're trying to regulate and calm our bodies before bed. And what's calming to somebody with OCD is control, right? And so they're trying so hard to turn off those alarm systems in order to go to sleep. And so they're getting mom and dad to maybe I say, I love you twice before bed. And so what I'll often hear with parents is they'll say, yeah, like this kind of routine that we had used to be like, I said, I love you twice, shut the door, and she was fine. Now it's like a 2-hour routine and I'm having to hop on one foot and say, I love you. And then give them a pat on that, right? Like there's like all of these steps.
Yes. Can I, because
Yes,
so I'm
yeah.
going to give you I'm going to be your client here for
Yeah,
a second.
yeah.
So little Braulio,
Mhm.
he might be on the cusp
Yeah.
of, well, okay, so you'll tell me, and I might be saying this wrong, but so I have experienced a similar thing with Braulio.
Okay. Yeah.
And so you'll maybe help me with a strategy here, and I'll tell you what
Mhm.
I've done, which
Mhm.
I do not know. And sometimes it's been okay. And sometimes I'm like, I don't know what I'm
Yeah,
doing.
yeah.
Or I get angry.
Yeah.
So same thing. It's like at bedtime routine.
Yeah.
And we also know that they're tired. So their regulation is
Mhm.
much lower because they're dysregulated because they're tired, right? They don't
Mhm.
have the same amount of energy, and their brain is turning off. Emotions are high, intelligence is low. Anyway, so will start to get into that state, and then he's starting to have a tantrum, and then it's like, "Mommy, you need to back up a step, and I'm one more step, or you need to move this way, or you need to say this thing." So exactly, like, jump
Mhm.
on one foot. He hasn't said that.
I just threw that one in.
But it's kind of like that.
Yeah,
Like, it
yeah.
feels like, or it's
Yeah.
like, put your hand on your nose. Like, again, maybe it's not
Yes.
like that, but it's like that.
Yeah.
Like, it's that type of feeling. And so what I have, so one, as a parent, it is so frustrating because
Mhm.
they're asking you things that are like, how would you say, what's the right word? Like that. I'm like, no.
This doesn't make
Yeah,
logical
I am not
yeah, like what
doing
yeah,
this.
yeah.
Like, this is not something I am going to be engaging
Yeah,
in. Like, I know
exactly.
you do not need this,
Mhm.
is what I think. Okay, right? Which he needs something. He's needing something.
Yep.
But I'm like, do I engage in this of what he's asking me? So I have kind of like, sometimes I will. I'm like, okay, fine. I'm going to back up one step. Okay, now mommy, pick me up. But you have to pick me up by my feet. Like, it has to be. And if you don't do it the way he's asked, there's a tantrum, right?
Yeah.
So then
Yeah.
as a parent, you're kind of stuck in this like push and pull. So, I mean, I'll be curious. Maybe I shouldn't say what I've done, and maybe I should ask, like, as a parent, what do you do? Because in one way, you're feeling like, I should just do it.
Mhm.
Like,
Mhm.
pick, what's the big deal? It's an extra second or two. And then in another way, I think if I do that, then what's the right way of saying this? That I'm then encouraging or reinforcing, that's the word. I'm reinforcing the behavior. So I actually tend not to do it.
Mhm.
And I stop it and I say, I'm not doing this. You'll have to have your tantrum. And is what I ultimately want to do. But I'd love to hear
Yeah.
from you, because are you ever stuck in this tug of war
Absolutely.
that like you just
Absolutely.
want to like be like, no.
Yeah.
And then in
Yeah.
another way, you're like, oh my gosh, like I just want to relieve
The stress
the
that
stress
yeah,
that
'cause
you're going through.
that's
So it's
that's
a hard place to be.
100%.
Yeah.
And it's coming from a place of love, like as a parent, right? You're
Yeah.
wanting what's best for your kid,
Yeah.
and you're also tired. You're
Yeah.
tired of this nighttime routine. You're like, let's just kind of wrap
Go to
this up. Like,
sleep.
but I'll kind of give like a example of even just like my own childhood, because I
Okay.
think it's like interesting to kind of hear of even just parenting styles, like back when I was a kid.
Mhm.
And this was again a time my parents didn't know I was diagnosed, and I'm assuming they would have handled things different, knowing
Mhm.
that I had a mental health disorder, right? But
Mhm.
I was raised in a time where it was kind of like a suck it up time,
Mhm.
right? And
Mhm.
so if I was having challenges with going to bed and I was to say to my dad, Dad, I need you to back up, say I love you 3 times, my dad would have said, no, and would
Mhm.
have just been like, okay, good night, and walked
Mhm.
out, right? Like that, he would have never engaged in that.
Mhm.
So my OCD, yes, it snowballed in the sense of me completing my own compulsions, but they never got tangled in these compulsions
Yes.
because in their brains it was like, no, I'm just not going to do that. And
Yeah.
so, not to say that that is the approach, because that
Mhm.
also caused me to feel very lonely in my
Yeah.
own compulsions and
Yes.
diagnosis,
Yeah.
right? But just kind of putting contrast of then you have the parents now, who a lot of our clients are in the state that you're in, where they're like, I want to like help and I want to do these things because I don't want them to feel stressed and I just want them to go to bed. But now this is snowballing into becoming a whole production, and
Mm.
like it's causing everybody a state of stress. And
Mhm.
so what I kind of propose and will often like talk about is, how can we provide those sensory regulation strategies because obviously their nervous system is heightened in this state,
Mhm.
right? They're
Mhm.
having challenges calming their body before bed.
Mhm.
And if we're kind of dealing with an OCD diagnosis,
Mhm.
then we need to look at what's called exposure response
Mhm.
prevention therapy, which
Okay.
I can go into
Yeah, let's
to
go
yeah, let's
into
have
it.
some
Yeah.
details. So exposure response prevention is like the gold standard for
Mhm.
OCD treatment at this time. There's a bunch of other modalities, but that's kind of like the cream of the crop for for
Mhm.
OCD treatment.
Okay.
And what the idea behind it is that you're having the person's being exposed to their fear and they are refraining from doing the compulsions to relieve the anxiety from that fear. So
Okay.
the exposure, right, and
Okay.
response prevention. You're preventing the classic response that they would go into.
Okay.
And so when we kind of do that, it's very strategic and it's very systematic and gradual that it needs to be done. Like I
Mhm.
said, with my parents kind of just going, no, we're not going to do
Mhm.
that. That
Mhm.
was a fine strategy because my OCD didn't
Mhm.
become more snowball, but it also put a lot on my own
On
nervous
you.
system,
Yes.
right?
Yeah. Yeah.
And so it is really important that families do work with a mental health professional that has training in ERP because it needs to be done very systematically, gradually, especially if these routines have become so ingrained
Mhm.
with them and their child.
Mhm.
And so, for the example of the bedtime routine,
Mhm.
how that would look
Mhm.
from an ERP perspective is the healthcare professional maybe sitting down with you because Braulio in this
Mhm.
example is quite young,
Mhm.
and setting down what are the steps of the routine that we are doing right now.
Mhm.
And you could say, oh, he gets me to step back, then I have to lift him up, then I would say I love you, and we would map out kind of what that bedtime routine looks like. Then we would talk about what in this routine can we phase out
Mhm.
or stop doing that's not going to cause him to go into full dysregulation or
Okay.
upset mode.
Mhm.
Maybe the step one, the you stepping back one, is a new addition that he's added,
Mhm.
and it hasn't actually been super ingrained in his like little routine yet.
Mhm.
And so we can try to, oh, I'm not going to do this one, but I'm going to try this one instead and see how he reacts to that.
Mhm.
The goal is to not trigger the child's nervous system into complete dysregulation response.
Mhm.
Because then when we do that, we're teaching the brain, yes, we got to be really go strict on that routine again next
Mhm.
time, right? I don't want to get
Mhm.
to that state again.
Yes.
We want to train the brain that when mom didn't do that, nothing
I was
happened.
okay.
Yeah, nothing happened. What I was scared to happen of me getting dysregulated, not feeling right, which sounds like what's happening.
Yeah.
He's got this routine to make him feel
Yeah.
right.
Yeah.
And I felt okay when mom didn't do that
Yeah.
routine. And
Yeah.
over the repetition happens, his brain starts to not set off that alarm when you
Mhm.
don't do that.
Mhm.
And then after that's been successful, maybe we take out another part of the routine that hasn't
Mhm.
been completely ingrained again. And we
Mhm.
start to slowly fade back these exposures
Mhm.
to the point where we aren't doing or aren't as integrated in these
Yeah.
rituals and
Yeah.
these cycles that they're in. Does that make
Oh,
sense?
that makes total sense. That's really great. I hope it's helpful if I just make it even
Please,
more
yeah,
concrete.
please.
So it's like, take the step back, get me the teddy,
Mhm.
or let's say, take a step back, take a step forward, give me the teddy, kiss, say I love you.
Mhm.
Hey, do we remember that? So then you're trying to take out one of those.
Yes.
So
Yes.
take a step back, take a step forward, give me a teddy, give me a kiss,
Yeah.
say I love you.
So I would ask you,
yeah, okay.
which was the last one he added, or which one's like kind of one that he doesn't really seem to like be that attached to?
Okay, well, let's say like I feel like I would want to keep I love you and give you a kiss. Can I
Okay.
say that
Yeah,
as the
yeah,
client? Like I feel like
absolutely.
I want to keep that. And then your question was which one?
Yeah, which one's kind of he maybe is a late addition to this new routine or this routine,
Well,
or
let's say the teddy.
okay,
Let's
so
just say that again, this is hypothetical now,
yeah.
but let's say the teddy.
So I would kind of gauge where he would be with the teddy. Maybe for the first time you could say, if he wants you to bring the teddy to him, or you're going to say, I'm going to actually put Teddy right here today. And
Mhm.
maybe you're still moving Teddy, but you're putting him in a different spot. See how kind of he gauges
Okay.
that. If
I
that's
think he loves Teddy.
Okay.
So
Teddy might be a hard.
would be a stressor.
Teddy might
Teddy
be.
would be a stressor
So
in
that
that
may be the
routine.
one we don't target.
Yeah,
Then. So
okay.
the I love you
Yeah.
and the Teddy one maybe is ones we stick to for
Yeah.
now, because those are also kind
Yeah.
of fair ones of a nighttime routine, right? Like I
Okay.
also don't want to take that away from you
Yes.
having a nighttime routine with your kid, right?
Yeah.
But
yeah.
the stepping back
and
is
the
kind
stepping
of
forward.
yeah, is a little bit obviously something that's not lining up with.
For me, for sure.
Yes.
Yes.
And so maybe you're just going to say, I'm going to take half a step today back. Right.
Okay.
And seeing if that triggers him.
Okay.
It might, because he
Yeah.
might be looking for that just right feeling that he has in his
Yeah.
brain.
Yeah.
But maybe you're kind of just playing around with it, or
Yeah.
I'm going to take 2 steps forward today instead of that step back, and see kind of how he does with that. And you're
Yeah.
just building flexibility. Again, the
I like
goal is
that.
we're teaching the brain,
Mhm.
Mom did it different than what I wanted, and I was okay.
And I was okay.
Yes.
Something different happened, then I can be okay with
And
that.
I can be okay with it, right? And this is
Yeah.
why it's so important to talk to a healthcare professional, because a lot of it is trial and error.
Mhm.
When it comes to kids, like if I was working with an adult, I could ask them, hey, what part of this routine seems the least sticky out of
Mhm.
all of this? What do you think you
Mhm.
can do? I want you to be challenged. I want your
Mhm.
anxiety to kind of pop its head, and
feel
yeah,
it.
to the OCD to be like, wait, whoa, 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 whoa.
Yeah.
But I want your OCD to then go, oh, okay, we're good.
Yeah.
Right. So I want it to be a challenge, that just right challenge, but I don't want to overwhelm, and I don't want it to be kind of like, whatever, like that was
Mhm.
nothing. Right. So
Mhm.
when working with adults, we're working with parents that have the kids are having the challenge with OCD. It is important we try something, see what happens. Try something, see what happens, and
Mhm.
we kind of adapt that way to target the beast
Mhm.
that is like these rituals and routines that parents
Mhm.
often get really integrated with.
that are exhausting everyone
Exhausting.
involved, right? Like
Exactly.
the child and the parent, right? Like it
Mhm,
becomes
mhm.
debilitating to the point that everyone's just frustrated and we're
Yeah.
all tantruming, right?
Exactly. Yeah.
And so yes, I think that makes a lot of sense, and I could definitely see how. Yeah, so it's like small, just right challenge
Mhm.
of removing a piece of that pattern that's been created.
Yep.
And seeing where we can tolerate some discomfort.
Exactly. And
Yeah.
when we're working with kids
Hmm.
that are really young, that's all we can do, right? Is kind of trying to gauge them, where their nervous system is. And what you might find is one night they tolerate that change. Another night it's like, no, I need that routine.
Yeah.
And sometimes that happens because like we talked about, it could have been a stressful day at school, and he's seeking more of that control before bedtime, right? And so it is important to kind of also be a little flexible, that if we are working on these things, that we're gentle with ourselves, that maybe one day it didn't trigger to remove it and maybe the next day we did. But
And
consistency is really important,
Yeah.
because we don't want to sometimes do it, sometimes not, sometimes do it, sometimes not,
Yeah.
because then we're
Yes,
creating more
consistency.
unpredictability. And
Yep.
again, OCD is looking for certainty. That's all it's looking for, right? So
Yeah, no, and that the consistency is so I know just in general with creating certainty or creating a habit, like having consistency is so important. And so being consistent with what you're doing with your child in this process sounds like a really key element
Yeah.
in supporting them through as well.
yeah, because consistency is safety, right?
Consistency, safety.
And
I like that.
the kid's brain.
Trauma the Tiger liked that.
It's like,
Sorry.
that is correct.
That is correct.
It sounds like Tony the Tiger.
Sorry.
Thank you.
Taylor.
Thank you for the
I know I
addition,
threw
Tony.
that in there. It just felt right.
I think it truly is like that consistency piece is because again, if we're backing up, what is the goal is to train the brain that it does not need to send off these alarms. And in order to do that, we have to create a sense of safety for the brain and for the child, right?
So thank you for sharing that. That makes sense. Consistency is safety. I haven't heard that sort of term together, but I love that. So if I could just dig, so with Braulio, and I hope let's see if this is in line, because I've been curious sometimes. I'm like, wonder if this is OCD or if this isn't. And so where I've teetered is that Braulio's isn't a consistent thing. Like in terms of him needing these 4 things every single night. His is like, and now it's less and less, and his might be developmental, but like it might be, if it happens, let's say once a week, and it's more of like trying to get me to do certain things, but it's not it's not necessarily the same pattern or the same things. So would you address, maybe what's my question? Would we handle that differently, or is that differently, or should there be a concern, or is that something that I should be wondering, like, is this OCD and should I be looking at this differently, or should I be doing something differently?
I
Does
think,
that make sense?
yeah, that's
Yeah.
a good
Okay.
question, and it's like hard for me to answer that
Yeah,
because it truly would
that's fair.
depend on like the person, and I would have to like get
Mhm.
more details. But I think we need to think, because I get this all the time where
Yeah.
people truly come up to me constantly saying, "I think I'm a little OCD. I think I have some OCD tendencies,"
Mhm.
and that's OCD tendencies are like people have rituals.
Yes.
Like if you look at
Yeah.
professional athletes, right? Like hockey
Yeah.
players, if you were to just watch them during playoff season, you'd be like OCD, 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 right? Because
Yeah,
like
yeah,
they
yeah.
have like I have to wear the same socks
Yeah,
that
yeah,
I
yeah,
wear.
yeah.
Like I can't shave my beard. Like they
Okay.
have these rituals that don't make sense, but like they are doing them because their obsession, their worry is, what if I don't win this game, right? And so yes, people have OCD tendencies. When it becomes an OCD disorder or a diagnosis is when it's impacting day-to-day functioning, right?
Yep.
Impacting your social relationships with
Okay.
people, impacting your ability to engage in like self-help routines. So like sleep is now 2 hours long because you have all of these rituals, and it's consistently 2 hours long. It's not just every now and
Okay.
again.
Okay.
Because
So it's the consistency of how often it's happening.
yes.
Yeah,
Yeah.
because like a lot of it is
And if
so
it's,
so like, for speaking from my own experience, it was every single night. And so there were elements where it would evolve, or there were things where it would be kind of staying the same. And so for those things, it really goes back to the consistency. It's not that sometimes compulsion and all these things that do impact our daily lives, that those aren't things that we do have to address with our mental health. But it is that it is that
good point.
it's when it is OCD, and because like we had the discussion, because I had made the comment of mild, and mine was because early diagnosis around like childhood trauma, and that may have been part of the incident trigger, as well as my own neurodivergence as well. So like there are things where there's the comorbidities of other neurodivergence that can cause that. And so there's so for me, I wouldn't be called a pure diagnosis of it. And also it's like, while a lot of my things that I do have to keep myself in check with, like there are things like, talking, I had mentioned earlier, my mom's care. I have to have that certainty of like checking in, and I will be, she'll be like, you're asking me, this is the 10th time you've asked me that. And like, and stuff like that. And that's where my dysregulation and elements that I do that, like things like where, we've gone to eat plenty of times, Paula, my rituals with food. Like you can think of that as like being something that is a consistent marker. But the thing is where it addresses is, does this, for me, like if I was holding up the table, which would create a social pressure, or if it was impacting my ability to eat, then impacting the ability to get back to work, then we'd look at ways that we have to address it in that. Whereas like, is this just something that kind of gives them the certainty in that moment, and it is not something that is evolving, or because there's probably something else, mental health, that is going on that does need to be addressed. Like what Taylor was saying about like dad being away longer and in the home and stuff like that. Like those are those triggers are really the things, because those are things that we can look at, and we can look at other things to control that might impact the actual behavior, but actually like mitigating the specific behaviors, seeing what is, expanding it and evolving it, are those things. So
because sometimes it is like a personality type too, right?
Yes.
Like
Yeah.
some people are perfectionists, some people are type A, they need things done a certain way, and that can often be mistaken as I have OCD.
Mhm.
OCD, if you have it, causes a ton of distress. It's not liking things a certain way, it's needing
Needing
things a
things.
certain way, or your entire body feels like it's about to explode. Like those are two very different
Different
things.
things.
Same with having anxiety, which we all can relate to, and having an anxiety disorder. Right?
Mhm.
Does it impact your day-to-day functioning, your ability to do all the things that you want to do during the day? If that's a yes,
Mhm.
then yes, it's really worth getting checked out. Same with
Mhm.
OCD. People have rituals, people have routines, people like things a certain way. If it's causing you a ton of distress and a ton of upset day to day,
Mhm.
then 100% go get
Mhm.
assessed, because that could be a diagnosis. But
Mhm.
it
Mhm.
for sure often gets, and that's why social media, and I think I talked about this in part one,
Mhm.
because I'm passionate about it, is often media jokes about OCD. It becomes a funny line. And I see it
Mhm.
even, I was watching a show and I won't name it, but one of my reality shows, and I counted how many times that season that somebody joked, "Oh, I'm so OCD," or said some
Mhm.
OCD comment.
Mhm.
And it's just fascinating because it's just kind of played off as this joke of liking things clean, and people don't realize the true amount of distress and anxiety and discomfort that a true OCD is. It's not
Mhm.
liking things a certain way.
Mhm.
And it's something that,
Mhm.
like, with from everything from mental health to disability, like we're now seeing it with ADHD people who normalize it's that's just my ADHD, and I'm like,
Mhm.
I will sit in my day and I'll be like, the amount of energy that I have to put into focus, because like that there is, and then people who literally take that for granted don't have executive functioning challenges like I do, and then they just trivialize it.
Yeah.
Like that's something where it's like there's this, and now we're even seeing it with autism. They're like the tism, that's just my tism,
Yeah,
and it's
exactly.
like no, it's not. Like mental health is real, but the reality is this completely debilitating you to the point of dysfunction?
Yes.
And that's because the thing is everything is a spectrum in terms of mental health, disability, and stuff like this. But where we trivialize it and where it impacts people's lives, that's the real point. Because the thing is that impacts when Taylor needs to advocate for herself based on how something's impacting herself directly. That's going to be something where when I have to advocate to my specific needs because I just can't do this because it's literally like that's how my brain's functioning, or I just need more time for something, that people don't understand that
Or
because
don't
now
take it as
it's
serious, right? Because
exactly
it's just been this kind, that's a good point, Mike. It's double edged. Like I love people talking about mental health. I
yeah.
love people being more open about OCD and ADHD, and like I love these conversations. Like 10 years ago, this was my goal. This is why I opened up about my own diagnosis.
Mhm.
And the duality
Mhm.
being that it is becoming almost watered down, a lot of these
Mhm.
Yeah.
mental health diagnoses. And so then when somebody truly is suffering, it's
Mhm.
not taken as seriously anymore. And so like I think we just need to be cautious of that. And I don't have an answer to that, but I think it's just something that needs to
Yeah.
be
So
noted.
so why is that what's then it's not taking as seriously. Then it's not taken as seriously. And why is it so important that it is taken seriously?
Yeah, good point. And so I think for many reasons.
Okay.
One is with the healthcare
Mhm.
system, right?
Mhm.
If I'm going in and talking to my doctor about, I'm having these anxious thoughts, and then I'm doing these rituals and things, and they are also kind of watered down in terms of, well, I have 10 clients that just came in that were saying
Mhm.
kind of something similar.
Mhm.
I may not be taken seriously in my own with my
Mhm.
own
Yeah.
healthcare professional. So that's a big
Mhm.
area.
That's yeah. Too.
Hospitals, same
Yeah.
thing, right? Emergency care is like
Mhm.
we have some people coming in that are really in a state of distress.
Mhm.
And if the doctors, again, in healthcare one of my thesis actually in my for my master's was the perceptions and the attitudes from healthcare professionals
Mm.
towards mental health,
Mhm.
mental health in general.
Oh, cool.
And
Yeah.
what I found is that a lot of even healthcare professionals are not educated in mental health. And
Mm.
so they're getting feedback from just society and media and stuff of what mental health is. Just because like they're a healthcare professional doesn't mean that they have all this knowledge on mental
Mhm.
illness. And so by it not being taken seriously, we're also risking it not being taken seriously in places that matter, which is our healthcare system and where a lot of these people are turning for help
And
and
then people
support.
not getting the care and
Exactly.
time and energy to help them in the way that they need, or
Yeah.
maybe getting the medication that they
Yes.
need.
And
Yeah.
another area is schools,
Mhm.
right? Schools, if we have all of these teachers who again have I say watered down because it's
No,
the only
that's
way
fair.
I can
Yeah.
watered down
Yeah.
view of these mental health diagnosis.
Mhm.
And they're like, well, I have 20 people with ADHD, so I'm just going to treat all of them the same.
Mhm.
That the people who truly have ADHD that have been diagnosed and that's impacting their day-to-day functioning are not getting the right accommodations in place to
Mhm.
have it to be able to be successful, right?
Or
And that
or
is
what
hard because, yeah, go
yeah.
ahead, Mike.
Or one of the most dangerous myths of them all is the overdiagnosis myth. And the thing is
What do you mean by the overdiagnosis myth?
so what it is people are dismissive of disability disorder because they're like, it's overdiagnosed. It
Mhm.
happened immensely with ADD and ADHD. Now it's
Mhm.
all considered all under ADHD and different types of
Mhm.
ADHD.
I
Now,
will admit,
and
and I don't know if this is controversial, I feel like the amount of people that I know diagnosed with ADHD, and being, I'm exaggerating, is everyone.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't know what that means anymore. Like, to me, I've kind of made sense of it
it's
that all of our brains are
and
just, can I
and
just finish this
yeah.
one point? That all of our brains are just way overstimulated because our society and systems that we live in are so overwhelmingly stressful, is honestly what I've kind of like put it down to a very simple point. It's just like we're
and
all trying to survive in this very overwhelming, overstressed environment.
and what I would
I don't know, but that's like, if we're all ADHD, what does that mean?
and what I would say is so there is misdiagnosis.
Mhm.
However, the thing that was the precursor to this was the fact that there was the idea that anyone could give a diagnosis mildly in schools and stuff like that. And they were like, well, everyone, there was an animosity towards it. And like I mentioned, like executive functioning as being a challenge, which is one of the core things, because there's different types of inattention. There's different types of things with this. And if we're going, and so the big difference is we also know that there are other things that can be treated similarly or be treated with certain things that are being looped into it. A big one is trauma, and that's something you're very much a specialist in. Trauma can present as ADHD. Trauma can give someone
Well, I wouldn't
the
say it that
appearance.
way. When you have experienced something traumatic, it can impact you, and you can have behaviors or present in ways
That
that look like
and
ADHD. Yeah.
and so the unwillingness of people necessarily to where they're impacted by social media and other things where they don't necessarily understand it, we might get a different diagnosis. Now, a lot of the strategies are similar for addressing it for certain things, but the thing is depending on where that core thing, whether it's disability disorder, mental health, might impact what is the thing that helps to get to the point where that person thrives.
Yeah.
Because it could be a point, yes, this person needs medication. No, this person needs CBT. Someone might need, the exposure therapy, stuff like that. And like, I was even just thinking to myself, I'm like, when you were having the whole conversation, I'm like, oh man, was my phobia stuff that I went for exposure therapy just my OCD kind of like projected? I'm like, and I'm just like thinking to myself, I'm like, well, I'll have to reevaluate the next time with my mental health professional. But the thing is it's a complex web. But the thing is the mentality of this overprescribedness. It's like the good thing is more people are being diagnosed. That doesn't mean that we don't have to accommodate. It doesn't mean that we don't have to look at helping people thrive within that.
Mhm.
And like on the other side of it, yeah, people have ownership with it too.
Mhm.
Like a big part of it is taking ownership once you're able to conceptualize what it is to deal with disability disorder, mental health, and then making a plan and working with it. And some people don't have that ability to actualize.
Well, and
Yeah.
I think
they're
I
not-
think that's important because
Yeah.
that's where, and again I think I talked about this in part one, is the label of OCD, and people have asked me like whether that's been helpful, and actually I'm in a part in my journey where I'm trying to not peel away from the label. I still want like to identify as somebody who has OCD, but it has become a huge part of my life that
Mhm.
sometimes I need to be like, not everything needs to be OCD and
Mhm.
about OCD and stuff.
Mhm.
And so, but in my journey, it has helped to have that label to take ownership of it
Mhm.
and to use it as a way to advocate for myself
Yeah.
as well.
Mhm.
And not a lot of people do that. Or if we're
Mhm.
in a society where everybody thinks they have OCD, if I go, I have OCD, the next person will be like, okay, like, what does that mean? Whereas 10 years ago, if I said I had OCD, somebody was, oh, what does that mean? Like,
Mhm.
how, right? Like, they're curious. Now it's
Mhm.
kind of become, again, watered down, where
Mhm.
people have a perception of, oh, I saw that on that reality show that I was talking that guy just liked his house really clean. So that's my
Mhm.
perception of it,
Mhm.
right? So,
That's why this conversation's so important to understand what it actually really means
Yeah.
exactly.
and how it
Exactly.
actually really impacts people.
Yeah.
And just to wrap up
Mhm.
your point and what I had said before
Mhm.
you said that, I will say, like, with the people being diagnosed, I have seen that ownership and that sense of like understanding themselves and feeling empowered to find solutions and to
Mhm.
find ways to cope, which
Yeah.
maybe brings us
Mhm.
into
I was
coping.
gonna say that's
Yeah.
actually a good segue into like
Yeah,
what
Yeah.
I was
to
thinking.
coping. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
because there are tons of therapies and stuff that we can do. And when I'm talking about children and teens, which is our clients, right, that we're working with, um, kind of a common, I don't want to say mistake, but a common challenge that I see when working with families with a kid with a diagnosis of OCD is this kind of forcing of therapy
Mm.
on them. And whether that's with myself, like working with them, or whether that's with a psychologist or whatever kind of the avenue that they're using, they're wanting their kid to get better, which of course it's out of love. It's causing a lot of distress for the family. They're just like, please go to therapy to figure this out, right?
Mm.
What often happens, especially I see this with teens,
Mhm.
is there's a lot of resistance and pushback.
Mhm.
And therapy for OCD is not just a talk therapy. It's not just I sit down like on what you see on TV, I sit down and talk about my feelings.
Mhm.
It's hey, what's your fear? Now let's expose you to that fear to train your like that's exhausting work. And it's
Mhm.
time and time and time again of these exposures. That's so tiring. So if you don't have a teen or a child who's engaged or willing to even work on it or even knows like what am I even working on? What even is OCD? We're
Mhm.
going to keep hitting this wall, right?
Mhm.
And often I have to have this conversation with parents is now is not the time for us to do the hard work when it comes to addressing OCD.
Okay.
Now is the time to plant seeds with the child. So, talking
Okay.
about what is OCD? What does it look like? Externalizing ourselves from OCD. And what I mean by that is, I have a brain, and then OCD is kind of a part of my brain, but it's not, it doesn't run the show, right?
Mhm.
Mhm.
And starting to plant those seeds. But the
Mhm.
most important part of that is educating caregivers
Mhm.
because
Mhm.
OCD can be really contained and actually like really your child can be really supported if caregivers are educated in the right way
Mhm.
of how they are reinforcing their child's
Mhm.
cycle.
Mhm.
And I say caregivers, but even as an adult, my husband, my now husband, but when we first started dating, he actually read a bunch of books on OCD because he wanted to understand A, what I was going through, and
Mhm.
B, how he could support me. And it was really important
Wow.
because he needed to know that some of his behaviors, how some of his responses were going to cause me to
Impact you.
be,
Yeah.
get
Yeah.
into a cycle and
Yeah.
snowball and become worse. And
Mhm.
like often some of the traps that I'll see with parents is engaging in rituals, right? Getting so ingrained in a
Mhm.
ritual, providing reassurance, saying things like that would never happen or you would never do that. And I 100% fell in that with my mom growing up is, oh, am I a bad person, mom? Would I do that? My mom would be like, no, like you're not, but she didn't know that that was a constant reassurance, right? That
Mhm.
verbal reassurance. Other things are accommodating the child, only going a specific route to school because the kid gets distressed if you go a different route,
Mhm.
or separating the laundry and only washing
Mhm.
them as separates because the kid cannot have the laundry mixed together, accommodating because it's like better than just doing it, right? Or
Yeah.
another thing is avoiding situations for the kid. Like if the kid's having trouble at school, there's something's triggering at school. Oh, you don't have to go to school then because it's just easier to not go to
Mhm.
school. So having parents investigate how am I reinforcing these compulsions?
And which ones should I which ones do I go along with, and which
Yes,
ones don't I go along with? Like, how do
exactly.
you evaluate that?
That's where you need that healthcare professional, because
Okay.
it is very gradual and systematic, right? Like, we can't just suddenly, like, if I say this on this podcast episode and a parent's kind of like the lights gone off and they're like, oh my goodness, I'm doing all of these things. Great that you're able to recognize that. That's step one, right? Like, let's investigate how much, how often that we are
Okay.
doing these things. Now, let's work with a healthcare professional to slowly fade out these ones and work on the child's tolerance to not get so wrapped up in their compulsions and reinforce them, right? And
Mm.
that healthcare professional is really important, because if we go cold turkey and
Mhm.
we don't do any of these, what we call accommodations,
Mhm.
parents accommodating and
Mhm.
reinforcing,
Mhm.
the kid's nervous system is just going to get overwhelmed, and then they're just going to feel alone and anxious
Mhm.
and too
And
triggered,
maybe,
right?
like, I wonder if we can create a baseline, because again, I'm actually have my, I think, my parent hat on when,
Yeah,
as we're
yeah.
having this conversation. Like, if the accommodation becomes so much that it's putting you out of your routine, making
Hmm.
you late, stressing you out, then it's maybe not a healthy accommodation,
Exactly.
right? So I think that's how you can determine. Like, I'm just thinking, like, sometimes I accommodate and sometimes I
Yeah,
don't. And
yeah,
I think, I accommodate where I feel like it's still,
yeah.
matches like our routine. It's still, going along with what we're doing. But when it becomes that it's causing more stress
Yeah.
or putting you out of your way, and it's consistently happening,
Yeah.
is when you kind of
And it's
might
getting
and it's
worse.
getting
Yes,
worse.
that's a big key to know is, and that's why, again, working with parents is my number one approach for dealing with
Yeah.
OCD when working with kids and
Yeah.
teens, because educating the parents is seeing where OCD is rearing its head. OCD is very clever. And I
Mhm.
talk to my own personal therapist about this all the time, is it's like a chameleon. Like, it can adapt and it can figure out, how can I blend in so the person who even has OCD doesn't know that it's
Mm.
OCD, that it's me running the show. Like, it's very, very smart. And so we need to equip parents, and parents need to learn, when is it OCD running the show? And one of them is it getting worse?
Yeah. Are
Like,
there books on that? Like, do
yes,
you
there
okay,
I
you'll have is there a children's book around that?
so
Or do you need to write one?
well, I'm going on maternity leave, so I have all this free
Oh,
time.
yeah, you'll be so free.
But no, there are some books actually, and we can even like link them,
Mhm.
or Deanna can add
I
that
think
into
that
the
would be
show
really
notes, or
great. Yeah.
yeah, yeah. But there are some kind of basic understanding. I want to be careful with that, because I
Okay.
have had parents that get
Mhm.
workbooks for their
Mhm.
kids and teens. Again, coming out of a good place, like where do I
Mhm.
start? How do I get them like working on these
Mhm.
things? Um, the ability, or some of these workbooks, and most of these workbooks, I'll say, work on cognitive strategies. And
Mhm.
what I mean by that
Mhm.
is trying to change the way that we're thinking,
Thinking. Yeah.
right? And for kids and teens, as we've talked about in the regulation podcast episode, and even part one, is
Mhm.
kids and teens don't have this ability yet to think
Mhm.
about their thinking. They can in certain situations, but their executive functioning skills aren't fully developed till their
Definitely. Yeah.
20s, and
Yeah.
now research is saying early 30s, right?
Mhm.
So getting them to sit down on a workbook and challenge their thinking
Mm.
isn't really doing much, and if anything, it can create just a negative association
Mhm.
with wanting to
Mhm.
work on
Mhm.
themselves, right? And so
Mhm.
in
And potentially just make them feel bad about
yeah,
themselves, right?
exactly,
Like, yeah.
exactly. Like, I didn't start, keep in mind, I didn't start therapy until my 20s, but like, even like the cognitive approaches that I did, like CBT, cognitive behavioral therapy, acceptance and commitment therapy, internal family systems, all great therapies for OCD. It's very much cognitive based. The ability to,
Yeah.
we call it metacognition, right? The
Mhm.
ability to think about your thinking, which is
Mhm.
a skill that takes time. It's kids,
Mhm.
often kids don't
Mhm.
have that. And so,
Mhm.
which can be discouraging for parents, because I think sometimes they're just looking for a fix, right? Like, it's just like,
Mhm.
please just help my kid, like
Mhm.
teach my kid how what they can do. But in reality, like, the kid might not be there. And instead we have to look at, how as a unit, family unit, are we reinforcing these things,
Mhm.
and how can we change the environment
Yes.
to work on these, because you'll notice too, as a parent, if you start targeting these things of how you're reinforcing, the kid's anxiety goes down. Like, I'm not
Mhm.
saying it goes away, but it
It
goes
goes down. I
down.
mean,
Yeah.
it's the co-regulation, right?
Mhm.
Like, when
Mhm.
your calm can help create more calm in another
Exactly.
person. And so, yeah, what is in your, so yeah, like what can we control or what can we do now to
Yeah.
start to like be more curious, right?
Mhm.
Like, I think it's being curious in the situation. It's like maybe trying a few different things
Yeah.
here and there, maybe accommodating and see
Mhm.
how that goes. Is it okay? Like, is it making the person feel okay or is it making things worse down the
Yeah.
road? But it sounds like these small steps of like evaluation, a little bit of trial and error,
Yep.
of getting educated. But
Yes.
I also think like not getting overwhelmed in the education of it. Like, I'm just thinking as a parent, like also like just remembering to just love and create a
Exactly.
safe place for our kids as well. Like I know with Braulio, a lot of times, sometimes I'm just like, I love you and I know this is hard.
Yeah.
You know, even if that's just our first step
Yeah.
in that process is just reminding them that they're loved. And maybe you do take those few steps
Yeah.
like backwards, forward, and
Yeah.
stuffy. And then, like, I love how you keep reiterating, like, getting a healthcare professional involved.
Yeah, it is. It does.
Yeah.
It makes a difference. And I
Yeah.
know there's financial barriers. There's a ton of barriers of why that's
Mm-hmm.
challenging for a lot of families,
Mm-hmm.
but it is a really important step because
Mm-hmm.
sometimes I'll see, even if I talk about exposure response, I'll have a parent say, "Oh, I notice I'm accommodating in this way. So I just stopped doing that." And I'm like,
Mm-hmm.
whoa, 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 whoa. If we're looking at a routine, like let's say the routine is you have to drive a specific route every
Mm-hmm.
day and it has to be the same route
Mm-hmm.
that is a whole exposure response that we have to work on. So like, okay, maybe this day we start off on that route and we start to go then a different route. Like we have to gradually even work
Gradual.
to that one. We
Mm-hmm.
can't just remove it out of this if it's
Mm-hmm.
so ingrained, right?
Mm-hmm.
And
Mm-hmm.
so like we just have to be very careful with it. And I also want to note too, because I often see this challenge is a lot of families will seek support from mental health care professionals. You need to make sure that they have training in OCD.
Yeah, so I was just gonna say,
Mhm.
like, who are these mental
Yeah.
health
Well,
professionals
and
that
their psychologists, social
yeah.
workers, OTs
Mhm.
can have the title of mental health
Mhm.
professional. Your family doctor can talk to you about these things, but I'm just cautious because you have to treat OCD as OCD.
Mhm.
And you can't treat it the same treatments you would use for anxiety. And I ran
Mhm.
into this
Mhm.
trap when I was in my early treatment. My one of my first therapists
Mhm.
didn't have the training for OCD now looking back,
Mhm.
and treated my OCD how you would treat general anxiety disorder,
Mhm.
which was sitting in my thoughts, challenging my thoughts, and just kind of doing that, which for OCD, that's not what we do. We don't just sit in our thoughts and challenge our thoughts. That's just going to create a
Mhm.
compulsion, right? That's going
Yeah.
to
Mhm.
make it,
Exacerbates it.
yeah, I'm going to make
Yeah.
it, like,
Mhm.
I
Mhm.
ended up actually just having panic attacks after she
Mm.
made me set an alarm for 10 minutes and I would end up just having a panic attack
Oh,
because it
jeez.
was too much and it's too much too fast
Mhm.
and it wasn't the right treatment. And so just because somebody does have a degree for psychology or something, like
Mhm.
make sure they have those
Mhm.
additional trainings for OCD
OCD.
specifically
Yeah.
because it cannot be
Mhm.
treated the same way as anxiety.
Mhm.
And also that note on that is when it comes to even the diagnosis of OCD, and I think I mentioned this in part one, is your healthcare provider, like your general practitioner, pediatrician, may be able to support you with that. But if it doesn't feel right, like
Mhm.
as a parent, if you're like, they're not saying it's OCD, and like I really feel like it is OCD, get a second opinion.
Mhm.
Ask for a referral to a psychiatrist. A
Mm.
psychiatrist is a doctor that specializes in mental
Yeah.
health, right?
Yeah.
That's like advocate for yourself. Like when I first got diagnosed, I was able to advocate. I was an adult at the time,
Mhm.
but my doctor was kind of humming and hawing. I had an anxiety and I think a depression diagnosis at one point from
Mhm.
her.
Mhm.
And it did not sit right. I said, that's not like what's not what's going
Going
on.
on.
Right. And so I asked for a referral to a psychiatrist. And within 10 minutes of talking to me, he said, oh, this is
Mhm.
completely OCD.
Mm.
Yeah.
And so it was so validating and if that sat
Mm.
right with me that in my gut, I said, that's exactly what it is.
Mhm.
And when it
Mhm.
comes to the
Well,
professionals, like they're going to be the people who they have their modalities that they're comfortable with, and like it's all about filtering it the right way. I would say psychiatry is definitely the right way. Pediatric psychiatry, because we're talking about
Mhm.
kids, because they'll be there, but then they may know a specialist in their field who really does address that element of it. And
Mhm.
like I know in our age of limited health resources, sometimes you might have to deal with who you're dealing with there. But again, get a second opinion. You can have that. It might take a little bit more time, but the thing is that will pay dividends down the road
Yes.
because they'll be able to address it the proper way. Because if you have the person who, when you need an electrician and they're going to try and be a plumber, it's not going to end up
Mhm.
Yeah,
well.
exactly.
That's
Like
yeah.
you need to be able to advocate for that. And again, the onus is on the parents. And a lot of my treatment is talking to the parents, and I'm like, you're the advocate in this situation, and
Mm.
until the child is able to advocate for themselves, like we have to kind of be in this system that we're in, right?
Mhm.
I also want to touch on
Mhm.
medications because that kind of
Okay.
follows in
Yeah.
that medication, which is a treatment
Mhm.
that often I'll get questions about.
Mhm.
And I'm not here to say one way or another whether your child should be on medication. That's a very individual situation or a very individual decision and should be discussed with a
Mhm.
healthcare professional. But personally, I went on medication and it helped me substantially, especially when I was in a place of a
Mhm.
standstill with therapy.
Mhm.
But I'll say it should not be used as a replacement for
Mhm.
therapy.
Mhm.
Mhm.
Therapy has completely changed my life and has gotten me to a place where I am completely functional and
Mhm.
minimal symptoms of OCD every day.
Mm.
Medication helped with that, but it
Mhm.
was therapy that made the difference for
Wow.
me. And
Yeah.
I just want to say that because I'm not against medication. Again, I will stand by that. And I think if it's the right route, it's the right route for your family or for your child. But
Mhm.
I just want to say that it's not a quick fix. There's no bandage solution of putting your kid on some medication and
Mhm.
their OCD going away. That's just not my experience of.
Yeah.
And are there key strategies that you could share or would share that were so important in your journey of alleviating some of those OCD, the impact of OCD?
I think it's kind of because it's been such a long journey. I think it's
Mhm.
such a puzzle to me now of like
Mhm.
all of these pieces and all of
Yeah.
these things I've learned. Like even right now, I spent many, 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 many years, like almost a decade doing exposure response
Yeah.
prevention, and
Okay.
so I'm familiar with it. I know it. I
Yeah.
teach it. I
Yeah.
practice it.
You
And
yeah.
so
Okay.
my new journey right now is on internal family systems with
Okay.
my therapist and EMDR, which I've never done, and so
Yeah.
it's kind of I'm wanting to target the OC at different angles and learn about it
Mhm.
and just learn about these
There's a great book. What's it called? Shoot. It's on internal family systems. It's a
we'll link it in the
great
notes.
We'll look it in the
Yeah.
notes, but it's a great if you're like, what is internal family
Yeah.
systems, which I was at one point. This book is a really great read. It's very
Yeah.
interesting.
But it's very I would say more adult.
Oh
Like
yeah, this
internal
one's adult.
yeah,
Yeah,
like you
yeah,
can do
yeah, yeah.
internal family systems
Yeah.
with kids, but
Yeah. No, this book is for
I'm
to
kind of happy
understand.
I waited to do these things and
Mhm.
where I'm currently at because I really know my OCD and I'm
Mhm.
able to put in
Mhm.
a lot of these practices. But
Mhm.
I'd say as a kid and my early therapy, what really changed for me, and again, I think I mentioned this in part one, is um externalizing my OCD from who I am.
Mhm.
And a quote that still sticks with me that my first therapist said is that, and my mantra was, it's not me, it's my OCD.
Mhm.
And so when I would have an OCD thought, I would start to just kind of like, oh, that's OCD. Oh, that's OCD.
Mhm.
And the more I kind of practiced this and started to notice it and realize
Mhm.
it, the more I was like, oh, my brain is my brain. This OCD is kind of like a virus
Yeah. Yeah.
right. That's kind of like intruding on my brain, but it's not who I am.
Mhm.
And I think that also helped during a time where in your teenhood, you're trying to find out who you are, your identity formation years, right? Like, who
Mhm.
am I as a person? It helped to kind of not attach myself so much to that and be like, that is,
To that part of
yeah, that
yourself.
part of me,
Yeah.
right? Like,
Yeah. Yeah.
I wonder what it would be like if I would have integrated and not realized that
Yeah.
and had been like, oh no, OCD is me, right?
Yeah.
I think I'd be a very different person
Yeah.
than I am now.
Mhm.
And now that I have hopefully fully executive functioning skills, not a
Doesn't mean
pregnant.
they work well.
Yeah.
For me, I speak.
Yeah. But like now that I have that, like I'm so much better able to like
Yeah.
just differentiate and not to say
Mhm.
OCD doesn't creep in and be like, oh,
Mhm.
this
Mhm.
is you, right? Like
Mhm.
it's not OCD. Not to say it doesn't have strategies to do that. It's just that has been the biggest, I think, change of
Mm-hmm.
me being able to kind of identify that and practice those strategies. So working with a therapist to
Externalizing that. Yeah.
externalize
Yeah.
OCD, maybe
Yeah.
through sand tray therapy, which we do at Key
Mm-hmm.
Creative, a lot of
Mm-hmm.
clinicians do, of acting out what OCD looks like, drawing out what OCD
Mm-hmm.
looks like. When OCD comes
Mm-hmm.
in, like, how does that
Yeah.
feel in our body?
It
Like,
can be playful and fun,
it
right? Like
can be,
therapy
exactly.
can be playful and fun
Yeah.
for
And we make
sure.
it with kids,
And
right?
we
Like,
do it
'cause,
with the kids.
yeah.
And so we are mental health professionals. We
Yeah.
have mental health professionals here on the Key Creative team. So people are definitely able to reach out to us. We have an expert here. She is going on maternity leave.
I'll be
But there
back.
are others on the team. Just because I brought it up, the book is called No Bad Parts.
Yes,
It's
yes.
a great read. And just talk, there are no bad parts. There's different parts of us that get developed for different reasons to help us live in the world in the best way that we can. And you know, some of them become, they call them exiles or challengers, and there's reasons why. But ultimately, you know, all these parts can serve a purpose, but also might need to like be repurposed, right?
Yeah.
So yeah. Thank you, Taylor. Is there anything else you'd like to share before we
No,
wrap up?
I hope that's helpful to people. I think like what I know a lot of people want often like that magic wand fix, right? Like what can I do right now to kind of fix this problem? And the answer is there is not. I've
No,
been in
there's
therapy
not.
for many, many years and
Yeah.
still am in therapy
Yeah.
because it's an ongoing thing.
Yeah.
I want to reassure families that once your child's executive functioning skills comes in, develops, gets better, like they can do some of these therapies and stuff. They just may not be at a place right now where that's what we're targeting, but that's not to say it's hopeless and there's nothing you can do
Exactly.
to support your child, right? And
Right.
one of the first steps to as a summary is assessing like, where am I accommodating and reinforcing these OCD behaviors, and how can I work with a healthcare professional to target some of these ones that are causing day-to-day functioning to just be too challenging.
I love that. And I'll just expand on that a bit from what we talked about earlier is like, what type of environment are we living in right now? What type of stressors are present? And just being aware of that as a caregiver. I know for me and our family and for myself, I'm always really aware of like, what kind of stress am I bringing in? Like, what type of environment are my husband and I creating? So that's another thing that is within our control
That's
that we
beautifully
can
said,
that we
Paula.
can be
Yeah.
aware of and sharing with our children as well. And then during those routines at bedtime, you know, thinking of like, how can I be the calm? How can I
Yes.
come in and be as calm as I can? Because it might be it's likely going to be chaotic.
Yeah.
Right? And so that's another thing that's in our control, whether it's OCD or not, is like, how can I be calm within this
Yeah.
situation
And be in
for my child and
control,
be
right?
in
Because
control?
most of these households where OCD has kind of been plagued this child, right? Has been this virus. It the parents are tiptoeing. They're
Yeah.
scared of this OCD. This OCD can become big and it can become big quick. And so it's they don't know how to react. So they just give into these accommodations because it's just easier. And then it just snowballs. I have had many cases where OCD is running the entire day of the entire family unit, not just the kid, the entire family unit. And it will do it quick and it will plague everybody. And so we have to work on identifying it and containing it and bringing it
Identifying
back
and
in.
containing
Yeah.
and trial and error of what we can remove or what might not
Yes, with a
disturb
healthcare
with a
professional.
healthcare
Yeah,
professional.
exactly. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Awesome. I do hesitate on that because I do know it's hard for people to reach out for help, which is
I
why
know
I'm
it is.
trying to like
I
give them a
know.
little
I
because it's
know.
so hard and it is a barrier.
Yeah.
And so yes, the healthcare professional
So if
and
that's
baby
too much,
steps,
just
baby
educate.
step,
Just
educate,
Yeah, read
educate.
some books. We can
Yeah.
link some books.
We'll link some books.
Yeah,
I think
for
that's
the parent,
really
'cause, like,
important.
yeah,
Yeah.
the child. Let's relieve the stress from the
Yeah.
child and let's
Yeah.
educate ourselves as caregivers, and then let's move forward with what we
And
can
I
do.
agree. And I think I know as a parent, I always try to remember this. My child's doing the best they can with what they
Absolutely.
have.
Absolutely.
And so are we. but they're also much more underdeveloped than we are.
And they don't want to be
And they don't want to be
No.
in this situation. So if we can also, I think another thing that I work on growing for myself daily is empathy, and how I can empathize and have a deeper understanding for my child and for what's going on, can be a really great tool as a parent as well in
Love that.
supporting our children. So
Great
awesome.
way to end that. That's beautiful.
Awesome. Thank you, Taylor. All right. So that's part 2 of OCD with
Awesome.
Taylor.
Yeah.
Stay tuned for her children's book.
Part 3 when I return.
Part
Yeah.
3. Yeah,
All
let's
right, shall
whoosh
we?
it out.
Let's whoosh it out. 3, 2, 1. Whoosh.
Key Talks is a project of Key Creative. Our co-hosts are Paula Audrey Rivero and Deanna Halls. Our production team is Michael Schwake, Jessa Dupuis, and Deanna Halls. Music by John Rivero. To reach out to us or access services for you or your family, visit keycreative.com. That's QICreative.com and fill out our online intake form. Thanks for listening. We'll catch you next time.